Go. Welcome to the Real Bible Rob podcast. And today I'm delighted to welcome Carmela with me. She speaks on TikTok about American history, race, politics, religion in such an insightful way. And what really caught my attention was her realism about the moment that we're in, coupled with a sense of optimism. And with all the terrifying changes that are going on in the world today, can we see that any change is good? Old and young people alike are, pining for days that never really were. And can we grasp what's really happening? And what it really is a reckoning. So Carmela said something that blew my mind and really caught my attention. She says, the only way out is through. The reckoning is uncomfortable, but it's necessary, and we've been avoiding it for too long, and we need change. So I've ended up quoting Carmela several times in sermons and podcasts. So I really, really wanted to speak with her. And I'm so delighted that you're here, Carmela, and that what a treat to speak with you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm genuinely honored. So thank you.
I'm so glad that we could put this together. And
Yes.
I have a few questions here, and we can just kind of go in a bunch of different
Yeah.
ways that you'd like. But I appreciate your expansive view. That's what I think really the value in what you've provided on TikTok, and that you have these clear-eyed thoughts about the time that we're in and putting it in perspective, something that's important to me as well. Can you say just a few words about yourself? Where you have what I call your prophetic voice, where that comes from, and how did you develop that? Where did that come from?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I go by Mel on TikTok, but my real name is Carmela Williams. I'm 31. I was born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. So heavy Bible Belt.
Yeah, right in the middle of it all. Yeah.
Yeah, very much in the middle of it all. I don't identify as Christian because I actually believe in Christian tenets, Buddhist tenets, Hindu
Hmm.
tenets. So that informs my worldview, pulling from all of these different belief systems. I went to school for journalism. I've always been a communicator, whether
Hmm.
it's writing or speaking. Even in high school, I was on the yearbook committee and I would interview people.
Cool.
Yeah, so I've always been aligned to that purpose of speaking truth to power type thing.
Mhm.
That's when I feel like the most myself. And I've tried to hold my tongue, it doesn't work. When you ask where my viewpoint, you said it's prophetic.
Yeah.
That's funny because I told my brother, I was like, I'm a prophet of the Lord. And I was kind of joking, but I was
You speak
kind of
like a
being
prophet.
I was being a little bit serious. I'm not gonna lie because I think where it comes from is it's not a simple answer. Growing up, one of the things, you know how parents will repeat certain things and it
Hmm.
just instills in you over time. One of the things that my mom used to tell us all the time is listen to your gut. If it doesn't feel right in your gut, then
Yeah.
it's not right in period. And I mean, I remember being told that as young as 6 or 7 years old. And
Uh-huh.
so I think when a parent reinforces that directive, it teaches a child how to hear their own intuition and how
Uh-huh.
it strengthens your intuition when you listen to your gut. That in addition to my knowledge of history,
Hmm.
be it world history or American history, and also just pattern recognition and a little bit of understanding about
Yes.
sociology, you can start connecting dots like
Uh-huh.
that. And one thing that I know to be true for a fact is that the types of people that are trying to rip our country apart right now have
Yeah.
always existed, will
Yes.
always exist, and will always be on the losing side. And that's not hope core.
Yeah.
that it's optimism. It's just fact core. Like that's
It's just
it's
knowing
not
history. Yes.
it's knowing it's knowing history, it's knowing pattern recognition, and it's knowing the fact that evil, the presence of evil, it's an energy, right?
Yeah.
And it's very, very real. And there are spectrums of it, but human evil is a real thing. And I read this book in college called The Nature of Human Evil by M. Scott Peck. Love M.
Uh-huh.
Scott Peck. And the thing about evil is that it has an emptiness and a hollowness on the inside that can never be filled. And
Uh-huh.
what that leads to 100% of the time is it eating its own tail, which is what we're
Yeah.
witnessing today. So it sounds like prophetic, but I'm just like, this is, I
That
mean,
is
play by
prophetic.
play.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
problem with prophets is they are opposed, though, because they're telling the truth. So,
I, yeah, and I feel like saying like, oh, I have a prophetic voice feels very egotistical. So I'll let you say that. But
yes, very much. Well, and your sense of history definitely comes out because, and I wanted to kind of touch on a couple of things. Also, the fact that we've always been here, and that there are waves of
mhm,
waves of reaction that come. Yeah, and you look at American history, it's just filled with that, right? So, and
yeah,
I try to talk about that a lot too.
yeah,
Now you've been reviewing Howard Zinn's book,
yeah.
"A People's History of the United States," in on TikTok. By the way, all the books that we mentioned here, including the one you did, I'll put in the notes so people can find it.
Good, yeah.
And you seem very energized by this book, and I which I think is really cool. Many of the themes and the long history of, or the long view of history in America, seem to resonate with what you've been saying before you started reviewing it. Um, how has reading it confirmed what your view, or changed your views in recent months?
Uh, well, I'll say this first. My views have not changed. If anything, they've grown stronger with better evidence.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, and here's the reason why I started reading A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn on
Hmm.
TikTok. Because I had the idea to read I had the idea to read in front of camera for social media back in like 2020.
Hmm.
And it was something I was going to do during lockdown. I didn't even have TikTok. I was going to do this on like Instagram or something. I don't
Uh-huh.
even know.
Yeah.
And I never did do it because it just didn't feel like the right time. Again, going back to listening to your gut, it didn't feel like the right time.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I had the right book for it. And so I
Uh-huh.
waited. And so when this year came about, and I made a video earlier this year telling people that just because okay, so the KKK evolved once slavery was
Right.
abolished.
Yes.
Presence and the existence and the birth of the KKK does not diminish the fact that slavery was abolished. And
Right.
so these really violent alt-right movements being in response to progress doesn't invalidate the progress. And so
Right. Yes.
when I made that video earlier this year, people's like mental pistons started firing off. Like, oh my God, I never
Yeah.
thought about it that way. And I was like, oh, we really have a poor understanding of history in this country. And we don't
Yeah.
know ourselves as a country because we're
Yeah.
young. I mean, you look at somewhere like something that's been happening this year is people compare America's infrastructure to China's infrastructure,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
which is not a fair comparison at all. China is
No.
like 10,000 years old. Like
That's true.
that country, their ancestors are like, I mean, that
You're right. Yeah.
our country's been around long enough for like my fifth great grandparent to have been there. Like we are literally like compared to these
Yeah.
other countries, we're like teenagers and we're
Right.
going
Yes.
ego deaths and adolescence like a teenager would. And so all of that to say, because we don't know ourselves as a nation and as a people, people often mistakenly believe in this fallacy that the American character started off here
Yeah.
and now here.
Yes.
No, no, babe. It is like
No.
quite the opposite. We started out down here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the
We're
national myth
here.
is much younger, like you say, is the
Yeah.
national myth of in China or in many European countries. I imagine anywhere that has very old societies, the national myth is so ingrained. They're not replacing. In American history, we do this a lot, right? We take other people's ideas and make them a part of our myth. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it just and that myth is so fortified by patriarchy,
Hmm.
white supremacy, and a toxic use of religion.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like that those three with the media fanning the flames, and I say this
Yeah.
as someone with a degree in journalism who greatly respects journalists. Um, people believe in a lie. Like
Yeah.
they believe in the false version of who America is and are
Uh-huh.
having trouble right now confronting what America truly is. And those two ideas, those two worldviews and realities are beginning
Yeah.
to integrate. And we're all starting to get on the same page. And of course, there's chaos. And,
Yeah.
I started reading this book because I needed people to understand that America has gotten progressively better over time. Even
Uh-huh.
today is
Yeah.
better than it was 50 years ago in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And just because the mask is off and America is showing mostly white people who
Right.
didn't know, like America's finally showing who she's always been. Because
Ben, exactly. And I
like
mean,
Frederick Douglass was saying this stuff. I mean, come
and you see
on.
that in the exhaustion for white people, especially liberal white people, is that they're exhausted maybe in a way that black people have always been, right? Or people on the margins have always been, and they go, oh, maybe that exhaustion is maybe it's good because then they can see what it's like, right? So.
Yeah, like
And that's a
it's
big, powerful thing in your messaging, right? Is that, oh, people are the scales are coming off a little bit, right? So yeah.
it's it's so irritating to me sometimes, but I have to remind myself that different souls awaken at different times,
Yeah.
and you can't rush it. And
Yeah.
some ever awaken in this lifetime, and so that's not something that you can rush. But it is like a. I remember when I got my first reality check as to what America truly. And I'm sheltered. I was a late
Yeah.
bloomer in the Black community because it
Yeah.
didn't until I was 13.
Uh-huh.
And I watched this movie. It's called Menace to Society. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I watched this movie and it's about these two young men in South Central LA in the 90s and just how violent and
Oh, mm-hmm.
aggressive and toxic that environment was.
Yeah.
And it like broke my brain. Like it broke my sense of reality because I was
Yeah.
like, people really live like this. And I started pulling at the thread. That's when my deconstruction
Yeah.
really started.
Yes.
And to me, I'm like, how are these people who are my age, twice my age, three times my age,
Right.
still not seeing?
Yeah. Well, and that's really interesting because I grew up in Orange County, just south of LA, and
Mm,
it always surprised me, still does today, that you would think that California, Los Angeles, and everything would be so enlightened, right? And because people were freed from the old South, from the East Coast, and stuff like that. And there is some truth to that. There is a little freer thinking in California, but oh my gosh, oh no, the reaction, the retrenchment is hard, and I think we see that
yeah.
in sort of the racial conflict that it still exists in California. So it's interesting that that was what
Well,
you know
yeah, one of
what
the
resonated with you. Yeah.
it broke my heart. I was like,
Yeah.
these boys, because in the movie they're like 18, like freshly
Right.
18. And if they had better parents, better circumstances, and maybe
Hmm.
weren't black,
Hmm.
their outcome would have been significantly different.
Yes.
And it's
Wow.
just like it's unbelievable to me that there are people who are grown adults who refuse to see that.
Yeah.
Like, and
Hmm.
so and it's also not even just like the people who refuse to see it, because going back to the whole white liberals thing,
Hmm.
I keep seeing people say, "Oh my God," like I mean like panicking.
Uh-huh.
"Oh my God, God, the United States is falling into fascism. We're falling into fascism.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I'm like, we have always been a fascist nation.
Right.
You guys are not locked in.
Right.
Like you are not seeing this.
It's the
You're
first
joking.
time it's at your doorstep, right? I think that's kind of the, yeah. And or at your doorstep in this way. We've lived in this sort of comfortable bubble for a little while, and
Yes.
now it's really come. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
wow. Well, so one of the things that in this idea of waves and maybe things get better with time. I mentioned to you about Reverend Dr. William Barber, who has written a lot, and he's part of the Poor People's Movement and stuff like that. But he wrote a book that I read years ago in 2016, The Third Reconstruction, and it affected me a lot because he talks about the first Reconstruction, of course we learn in school and so forth, as essentially a failure because that was the retrenchment was so hard, the backlash was so hard after we had black senators and representatives in the South, and this and it's sort of like, yeah, the South lost the war, but they won the psychological war.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until, the 1960s, 50s, and 60s that we had the second Reconstruction, he called it. And then, of course, uh, mostly because of the media savvy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And his allies, that we got the civil rights movement. And that was maybe like a partial or maybe mostly a success. So then he goes, well, we're definitely, and he wrote this in 2016. I thought that was just sort of maybe prophetic of him, is
Yeah.
that we're in the third Reconstruction. And that reminds me a lot about what you're talking about, this
Yeah.
wave of change. The jury's still out, where we're going here, but something's definitely up. So do you agree with that kind of thinking? How does that fit with your view of history?
So it's not that I necessarily disagree with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I agree that I agree with what he said about the first and the second Reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't believe that what we're walking into is a Reconstruction. I
Okay.
actually believe it's a Renaissance, and this is why I say this. And those are two different things.
Okay. Yeah. Explain that.
The whole concept of Reconstruction indicates that we have to rebuild something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after slavery
Yeah.
and after Jim Crow, that made sense. They did have to reconstruct their society.
Right.
Um, and the reason that I think it's a little bit different is a Renaissance typically comes after a dark age.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we are necessarily reconstructing our society. I think we're birthing a brand new one. And I think those are
Yeah.
two very different things.
That's important. Yeah.
Yeah, like I truly believe because despite what was happening in the culture, because after the 60s, like after the mid 60s, culture
Uh-huh.
started popping off. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
music blew up, like
Yes.
Michael Jackson, Madonna,
Yeah.
I mean, like I could literally this whole podcast could be us just talking about the music alone
Yeah.
that came from
Disco
boomers and Gen.
music.
Uh,
Yeah.
this, I mean,
And yeah, and
Donna
funk and
Summer.
all of that. Yep.
I mean, my God, like we got. I can't even. I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole.
Okay.
There's an explosion. There was an explosion of culture and an explosion of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But what the conservatives were doing in the background after the civil rights movement was so sneaky and so insidious
Yes. Yep.
because while everyone was distracted by the Nirvanas, the Tupacs, the Madonnas, and all of
Yeah.
this shit going on and like American culture just spreading across the world,
Yeah.
the Republicans were systematically dumbing down the nation,
Yep.
state
I
by
think,
state.
yeah, as we talked about, I think that's the moral majority right there is just
Right.
this pulling back. Yeah.
Even the fact that they're allowed to call themselves the moral majority after
Uh-huh.
historically committed the most crimes against humanity than
Yeah.
almost any group, any singular group in the world,
Yeah.
is a part of that myth that I talked about earlier. But
Hmm.
they have been systematically dumbing down this nation for decades to the point where we've been living in the dark ages and haven't even known it.
Yeah.
We
Hmm.
haven't even known.
Right.
Like, whole No Child Left Behind thing that Bush did, I would have been in
Yeah.
like elementary school when that happened. And it wasn't until I was out of school that we started seeing the
Hmm.
full results of that.
Yep.
It didn't really impact us that much. And, it takes about 20 years for these policies to go into effect. So
Yes.
what is happening today is because of Reagan.
Uh-huh. Yep. Oh yeah, I
And
mean the war on drugs, the
mhm,
crack epidemic, all of those were
mhm,
really, yeah,
right. And then you
division,
start
dividing. Yeah.
not, and then to go into that division and that divisiveness even more, think about all of the music executives. Think about people like what's that old white dude that was Diddy's mentor, and
Oh.
he Clive Davis.
Uh-huh.
Clive
Okay.
Davis. Think about all of those big music executives that deliberately manipulated the music they were pushing out to the
Uh-huh.
masses in
Yeah.
order to perpetuate their plan to dumb people
Hmm.
down, to make people more violent, to make men hate women more, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So these topics that I'm bringing up are all coming to light now.
Yeah. It's
So
true.
we were existing in the dark ages, did not know it because we were so distracted and so numbed out and so comfortable, right?
Hmm.
And the reason that I say that this is a renaissance, because what is a renaissance? It's an enlightenment. It's an age of enlightenment.
Uh-huh.
And so now people are deconstructing. You started going into the ministry to help
Uh-huh.
spread that light
Yeah.
when in 17, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
between the 50s and like the late 2000s, we didn't know what the hell was going on in this world.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever heard the name Epstein if you were outside of his circle.
Yeah.
And
Right.
now, between 2015 and now, just in the past 10 years alone, how much have we learned about what darkness really looks like in this world?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think you mentioned it, is that you'd much rather live in today's world than your grandmother's world or whatever, because even though it's hard, it was harder and it was harder to see the truth back then. And
Mhm.
in a lot of respects, I deal with this a lot too. As you know, I have parishioners who thought having three television channels and everything was neat and clean, cleaner from their point of view was better because it was easier for them to understand. But they just they have selective memory. They don't remember, and you
That's
know,
why
and
it was the Hays Code.
yeah, and we just do that, right? And you know, and so that kind of you did a video. I don't know if it was a series of videos about decolonization recently,
Yeah.
and it really it resonated with me a lot because I took a bunch of seminary classes from somebody named Randy Woodley. I don't know if you know that name, but he's an indigenous voice and author. A lot of people in my world know who Randy Woodley is. Amazing guy, um, and uh, um, and he talks about sort of we've had 500 years of harmful theologies. He's a Baptist. He was a Baptist preacher, right? As an indigenous person in Oklahoma, and
Mm.
so you know he comes from that side of the world. If you know Caitlin Curtis, that's a name who keeps you know she did Resistance, Living Resistance, and Native, and there are so many connections there between the colonization of of native people that's still going, you know, still goes on in many ways, and that maybe the Renaissance or the awakening of awareness in that, and the intersection of religion, because you know boarding schools were all run by religious organizations, including my own denomination.
Yeah.
So if the only way out of this is through, is that what decolonization looks like? Is that how do we how do we keep going through instead of detouring again, or is that just inevitable that we're going to be detouring again?
We're detouring all right, but we're detouring. people don't realize. See, earlier you mentioned, like, do you think that this is a reconstruction? This is a deconstruction.
Hmm.
Two completely different things, right? Because
Right.
we don't want to reconstruct what we just came out of, what we're coming out of. And
Uh-huh.
and and people were going into something, and I cannot disagree more. Um, what we are deconstructing, which is decolonizing, just said another way,
Yeah.
is all of these deeply entrenched systems that have been forced on us from birth generationally. And so, I'm sorry, like, your question was, how is the only way out through? Like, how to paint that
Yeah.
picture?
How does that, how is that deconstruct or deconstruction or decolonization is the only way out is through? Is that what it is? Or I
Yes,
come,
you
yeah.
have to go through that. Like, the deconstruction and the decolonization are what's inevitable.
Hmm.
And when I say, oh, it's a detour, all right, that's what I mean, because it's
Yeah.
touring, it's going hard left from business as usual. This is
Yeah.
not business as usual because, you know, after the Civil War and after slavery was abolished, it truly was a reconstruction, because what those newly freed slaves were trying to do was assimilate into white society,
Yeah.
which made sense. I mean,
Of
we had
course.
not
Yeah.
as Black people created our own culture. Like, that would come in the 20th century.
Right.
So they were trying to assimilate into white society. Even after the civil rights movement, they did that. They were trying to assimilate into white society, and there were groups that branched off, like the Black Panthers and
Uh-huh.
the Black Pride, Black is Beautiful movement, and that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Right.
But even that got infiltrated by the Black exploitation films of the 70s that showed
Right.
Black men as,
Yes.
which was undermining family values, which led to a
Uh-huh.
lot of dads and abandoned children. And I mean, I could go on. But
Yes.
what's happening today is we're not trying to continue to assimilate into white society, into rigid religion,
Hmm.
into or even into just like sexual binaries. Like,
Hmm.
people aren't trying to assimilate into their parents' world anymore. We're trying to discover what a new and better and more inclusive and more abundant world could
Yeah.
look for the rest of us. And so that means paying more attention to the quality of life on Native American reservations. That's
Hmm.
actually a project that I did in college. It's something that I looked into. We were supposed to research and, like, give a speech, school.
Uh-huh.
And I learned a lot about what life on a lot of Native American
Yeah.
reservations is like. And it's atrocious. They truly took everything away from those
Uh-huh.
people.
Hmm.
And the more that, if you notice, if you would have brought these topics up 20 years ago, people wouldn't have wanted to listen.
No, no, especially it regionally too. But one of
Mhm.
the things that's really interesting, I have a friend who was born and raised in Kansas, a Quaker pastor, and I said, "Can you talk about this stuff, Native American stuff in Kansas?" And she goes, "No, I get run out on rail. It's still
Mhm.
sensitive. It's a big deal there." I go, "Interesting. Why isn't it?" Because I'm in Seattle area. Why is the Northwest? Well, not have that sensitivity in the same way. And she said something fascinating. She goes, "That's because um, when uh, the settlers came to the Northwest, the Indians were already dead because the diseases they had not had a century or a couple centuries of exposure in the Northwest, and so when they came to the Northwest, it was empty from their
Yeah.
point of view, and so they the native communities never presented a moral reckoning or challenge to the settlers that came to the Northwest. Whereas in the you know in
Yeah.
her area, they're the result of the Trail of Tears. They're the result, and the shame is there. So this is all shame driven. It's like I imagine the overlap with Black communities is that there's so much shame involved, and it hides their it makes it so they just don't want to deal with it. They don't want to reckon with it.
Well, yeah. Earlier we were talking about that myth,
Hmm.
that American exceptionalism myth, and how
Yeah.
it's driven by patriarchy, white supremacy, and religion. To dig into that a little bit more, one of our biggest mistakes as a country
Hmm.
has been allowing white people to completely ignore their reckoning for
Yeah.
centuries.
Yeah.
We prioritize white comfort in this country,
Hmm.
white evangelical comfort specifically in this country over literally everything else. And if
Yep.
that means that we have to defund schools, if that
Yep.
means that we have to shut down museums, if that means that we can't have certain things that other countries enjoy, certain luxuries that other countries enjoy,
Yeah.
then that's what it means, because white comfort is the most important thing. And we keep allowing, up until now, we kept allowing the average white American to view themselves as the default for moral purity
Uh-huh.
and social superiority,
Yeah.
despite having the longest rap sheet in the country of violence, of
Yeah.
terror, of domestic terrorism. And we've
Hmm.
been living under a state of domestic terrorism, and allowing white people to believe that that's false, that that's just like a far left talking point,
Hmm.
is how we've gotten to this place where people can't look at Trump and see him as the Antichrist that he really is.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I wanted to bring this up too. Um, as P it's so ironic, and I feel like as a pastor you'll really appreciate this. It's so ironic to me that the more people deconstruct the hypocritical religious beliefs they were raised with, because these people
Uh-huh.
have completely bastardized the message of Jesus, like
Sure.
completely. The more that people deconstruct what they were raised with, deconstruct the shame and the guilt and the fear that was
Hmm.
instilled, just speaking strictly on religion. And the more that they balance that with what they see the Trump regime doing,
Yeah.
and what they see Republicans have been doing for the past 50 years, Trump and Netanyahu and all of these people being collectively what I view as the Antichrist, because I don't
Hmm.
think it's just one person,
Uh-huh.
is driving people more toward Christ's teachings.
Yeah.
And I believe, and again, I'm not Christian, but I believe we're witnessing the second coming of Christ.
Uh-huh.
But I think that rather than that whole apocalyptic
Uh-huh.
trumpets will sing thing, I think it's Christ consciousness, and the level of collective consciousness is rising to a point
Yeah.
that Christ wanted us to get in the first place, which
Hmm.
is why we're becoming so revolted and angry about where we've been, because that was a very low vibrational way of existing.
Well, and I think that what people don't realize is that the default or the end point of authoritarian religion is what we got in Europe in the 30s, and what we're getting here too is that religion is an extremely powerful tool, and for both good and bad. So I always say, in the Second Great Awakening, you had abolition. We wouldn't have had women's suffrage. We wouldn't have had abolition. We wouldn't have had public schools, things like that, without the Second Great Awakening before the Civil War. But at the same time, people were using religion to justify slavery, to harden their views. I mean, the South wouldn't have seceded without the religious fervor behind saying that slavery is what God demands for humanity.
Everything everything that Christopher Columbus did to the native Arawaks on the Bahamas,
Yes.
in the name of religion.
Yep. Yep. And one of my favorite verses, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except by me, is a beautiful expression of encompassing and inviting, but it is, along with the Great Commission, what fueled the genocide of Native Americans, what fueled slavery, and all of that exclusionary standing above the other. And that's why you and I talked a little bit before this, and in fact, I have carpal tunnel from responding to people about the rapture and how the rapture is used to separate people. And I
Yes.
and that's a great example of using religion as your tool for like you said, white comfort, for a default, creating a default, which
I don't.
evangelical Christianity today is the default Christianity in America.
It
Yeah.
is. It is. And I want to jump in here and say this. And this is what I mentioned earlier before we started the podcast. Also, I'm going to
Uh-huh.
save this. Um, my view of who Jesus was and what he embodied
Hmm.
is part of the reason why I stopped considering myself a Christian and why I stopped
Hmm.
identifying as a Christian, because I did not agree with the position that they put Jesus in, among many
Yeah.
other things. And what I mean by that is that I believe that Jesus came to this earth in order, as an ascended master. He had already mastered all the different levels of consciousness. Like,
Hmm.
he was an extremely advanced soul
Hmm.
at a
Yeah.
time where most people were operating on level one consciousness, if that.
Yeah, just trying to survive in the Roman Empire.
Just trying to survive.
Yeah.
The life expectancy was like 21. It was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the message that he was trying to give us as human beings was not received because they literally couldn't fathom what he was saying.
Yeah.
It was a message of self empowerment, finding God within and allowing that to open your eyes to the injustices that are happening around you. It was never
Hmm.
meant to be transactional. Christianity was never meant to be hierarchical.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
one of my biggest gripes with modern day Christianity is how transactional it is,
Yes.
and how these people keep looking for a savior, and they externalize the power of God and don't internalize it. They don't realize that they are their own savior. That's why he was
Yeah.
embodied in a human form, to show that God is within,
They
in my
and they
view.
built it into their theology, this transaction, that I've got to do something in order for you to save me.
That's why all of these denominations, like you're Presbyterian, that's why all
Yeah.
of these denominations exist, because the Catholic Church was selling indulgences.
Yeah.
They were literally
Right.
to get into heaven. Like, they turned it, they completely bastardized his message, which was to elevate, to grow, and to
Yeah.
learn. That is what enlightenment is. He was literally trying to teach these people how to reach enlightenment, and they were like,
Yeah.
"My king." And it's like, that's not. And so when you look at what's happening today, and you
Yeah.
see these people wanting to get swept up in the rapture, you just want a savior from your discomfort.
Yeah.
The only way to reach enlightenment on
Right.
Jesus's level is to go through that discomfort, which is what's happening today.
Yep. Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
And I think about, so I'm kind of on the ins. I put myself on the inside of this discussion about religion. What you're describing is what I hear from so many people, especially in your age group, right? But so many people is that religion today doesn't speak to them. They like Jesus, they think Jesus is awesome, but they
Yeah.
don't like Christianity because of what it's associated with. And we have so much work to do. Um, you know, uh, my so I wanted to talk a little bit about fear, because we talked about the fear of shame, we talk about the fear of discomfort, and how that has caused a lot of the reactionary behavior that we have today. And I feel like my job, or really the job of anybody who's trying to deconstruct things, is to reduce that fear of in a way that they can move into the future, they can go through the way out. Um,
Mhm.
so some people talk about that in terms of burning the church all the way down. We're done. I've had it. Um,
Mhm.
that Jesus guy, he's great, but and so I guess maybe the question I have for you, where do institutions play a role here? What do we burn down? Do we let it all burn down? Because right now, I think the evangelical church is in the process of burning down big time,
Yeah,
just
I
because of
agree.
what you said. So the
I agree.
question is, does it have to burn all the way down before we bring something new? Uh, there are many lovely, wonderful people I know in that world, but oh my gosh, they've got the blinders on because of nationalism. What do we do about that? How do you think about the going through with with respect to these institutions that we love and or many people love and live with.
At at the risk of sounding extremely cliche,
Uh-huh.
I think we do need to ask ourselves, what would Jesus do?
Uh-huh.
Truly.
Yeah.
And I think he would be pro burning it down and pro
Uh-huh.
flipping. And that doesn't mean
Flipping
burning down.
tables. Yep.
Yeah, literally flipping tables. And I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that that means shunning religious people, making them feel bad, making them feel guilty. But I do think that it means creating a space where people can ask the questions that they've always had without fear of punishment, where
Mm-hmm.
people can hold their parents accountable and hold themselves accountable and hold their church and their church families accountable without fear of retribution, because that's how we deconstruct. Because the thing is, everything Jesus did, he did out of love,
Mm-hmm.
never fear. Jesus
Right.
never ever acted out of fear. That's why he was so much more elevated than the human beings around him.
Mm-hmm.
Even, that there's that whole parable about, oh, they were on the boat and the great storm, and everybody was like, what
Yes.
are we gonna do?
And he's
You know,
sleeping. Yeah.
you guys are waking me up for literally nothing. Like, I'm pissed. Like, go back to my bed, right? So the most important thing I think for people to remember, and it sounds like bullshit. Can I cuss?
Yeah. Well, you already did. That's okay.
Sorry, I didn't even realize. I'm gonna do it.
Don't worry.
But it sounds like bullshit when I say this, but the love as an energy expands naturally. It is an
Mm-hmm.
expansive energy. Anything that is constricting you, anything that is trapping you, and anything that is making you feel small is not love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very disempowered state to be constricted and trapped. That is fear.
Yeah.
And so when I am like reading Howard Zinn's book, I'm doing it out of a place of love because I want to expand people's understanding of the types of people they're dealing with, the type of environment they're dealing with. And
Yeah.
I think that what religion has done for so many hundreds of years is they have used fear to
Yeah.
constrict individuality, challenge, pushback, challenge, rebellion, whatever, so that they can control these large populations of people. It's a
Yeah.
very patriarchal, paternalistic do. And so Christians have become consumed with fear.
Yeah.
And there are certain Bible verses that I believe are taken out of context
Uh-huh.
to perpetuate that fear. And the one that I point to all the time is the whole beware, for the devil lurks about like a lion seeking to devour
Yes.
whoever, that.
Uh-huh.
And I think that is a profound thing, but I think that they misuse it, because what that does is it puts Christians on the defensive against the whole
Yeah.
world. And they use that as an excuse to isolate themselves from people who think differently from them. And if you ever try to have an open conversation with them about anything at all, not even trying to convert them, just trying to speak
Right.
from your perspective, they immediately go on the defensive, accuse you of trying to pull them away from their faith, and then they
Yep.
just close their minds. And
They bottom
again,
they bottom line the conversation quickly.
they do.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had a friend say, because I was talking to him about something. I was talking to him about how I felt spirit was moving through me, and I use
Mm-hmm.
things like tarot cards and the pendulum. And
Mm-hmm.
when you say bottom line the conversation, this is literally what he did. I gave him this beautiful spiel about what I was
Yeah.
saying and what I was doing, and he was like, "Well, I just try to stay in my Bible, and I don't really get into stuff
Yeah,
like
oh yeah.
that." And
I
you're
hear that all
sitting
the
and listening.
time in my comments and stuff like that. It's like it always it like two or three comments in a row on a thread. It always goes, well, you're going to hell. You'll beat
Yeah,
your
literally,
reckoning. You're
there
and I go, what? Really?
there are so many walls built into their belief
Yeah.
system, which shows and proves my point that it's a belief system rooted in fear and not
Yeah.
love.
Right.
Because if
Because that's
truly
where they end up always.
felt,
Hmm.
because love is what makes you brave.
Yeah.
Courage, word core, heart, love is what makes you brave.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these religious people, forgive me for saying it, are cowards.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
true.
and a lot of people who were raised religious, and even though they've deconstructed the religion itself, they have not deconstructed that fear that they feel all the
Uh-huh.
time. And so when we look at the landscape, the political landscape and people are like this and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to
Uh-huh.
do? They're going to kill us all. Like, oh my
Yep.
God, you're still stuck in that very constricted, low vibrational, fearful space. And that's not to say that what's happening around the world isn't scary. I understand it being scary.
Yeah.
But my point is, I genuinely believe in my heart of hearts that it is their destiny to fail at what they're doing. And they
Yeah.
have been failing this
Yeah.
entire time. They're losing control of the narrative, they're
Hmm.
losing control of the media,
Yep.
they're losing some of their staunchest supporters. And again, not everybody will be saved, but they're losing their staunch supporters. They are revealing themselves because for 50 years at least, we all know it's been
Yeah.
centuries, but speaking specifically about the modern
Yeah, in modern
lens,
media environment.
for
Yeah.
50,
Hmm.
right, we're talking specifically modern. So from like 1950 onward, right?
Yeah.
1960 onward. They existed in shadows because these are a shadowy people. These are shadow beings,
Yeah.
and they existed in those shadows, and that's where they were the strongest. But because of their ego and because of their greed and hunger for power, they got bold and arrogant enough to believe that as shadow beings they could exist in the light, and they can't, which is
Yeah.
why everything is falling apart for them now, which Curtis Yarvin is talking about skipping town now.
Uh-huh. Well,
So they can't, these types of things in the light for this reason that I just named.
I did a video yesterday, and I thought about you, about the conversation we were going to have, and I said that you know uh, just the there are people who feel guilty because they're not laying their lives on the tracks themselves, on their bodies on the tracks for the movement, right? But I've met so many people, sort of these, NPR toting, tote bag ladies that go to No Kings protests. I go, be an ally. Being an ally, there are people on the
Yeah.
front lines. You got to be an ally because it's in that we have to show the world in places like especially like rural communities or places where you think that there's only one view of politics and everything, but when these people show up they go, oh, I'm not alone. They're
Hmm.
not the majority, the people who are controlling,
Yeah.
are trying so hard to control the narrative nowadays. We were 60%, or we're over 40% non-white in America, for the first time ever. That is breaking a lot of things which need to be broken. And so
Yes.
there is optimism when you look at it in a longer term, and that you just can't overcome the numbers, right?
Yes.
And so I guess maybe as we sort of wrap up here a little bit, I just wanted to kind of ask you, first of all, what are your social media handles? How do people engage with you? And what are your plans? How do you get your um, prophetic voice in a out more so that more people can engage with, with I think with your great view of where we're going?
Yeah. Um, Before I answer those questions, and I will answer those questions, there was one last thing that I wanted
Oh,
to
okay,
say is
yeah,
that
please.
um I know that a lot of people feel very helpless right now.
Hmm.
But that's only because this country has deliberately disempowered us as a people. They've said those pretty words, we the people, but
Yeah.
people need to remember what that means. And the change that we need to see going forward is only going to come from the bottom up. It cannot come from the top up. So, what I want to urge is for people to stop looking for the leaders and just be the fucking leaders. Like,
Yeah.
you don't to you don't need to externalize your power. That is a very bad habit that human
Yeah.
beings have, is externalizing their power in these demagogues, in these larger than life figures. And this is something that Kamala Harris has been saying recently.
Hmm.
Stop giving these politicians your power. You have the power to fight back against these forces. And I
Yeah.
see things in a very historical and political way, but I also see things in a very spiritual way. And the
Mm-hmm.
more that single person, it can just be one person, can make breakfast for the neighborhood children every morning, like
Uh-huh.
maybe start a
Yeah.
movement way, the
That's
more that
allyship. Yes.
this is what you're talking about, this is that
Mm-hmm.
allyship. The more that you can just touch your own community, the more that energy will become contagious because
Mm-hmm.
hope is contagious. That's why they try so hard to beat it down. The more that you can spread that love and expand that love outward, the more you can beat these people at the top who are trying to convince you that there's no hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is the most important thing. And that's
Uh-huh.
what we did in the 60s and 70s to get as far as we did. And people have forgotten that because they've been comfortable and they've been numb and they've been blind. And now
Yeah.
they're uncomfortable, feeling everything, and their eyes are wide open. And that's
Yeah.
exactly where we need to be. And they keep saying, I want to go back. You should should you, not only can we not go back at all, we will never go back. You shouldn't want to, because back there, everybody's
Yeah.
eyes were closed
Yep.
and there was a level of plausible deniability for every citizen in
Yeah.
this country to hide their eyes and say, I don't see it, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. But as we move forward, we really, really, really need to focus on individual empowerment so that we can impact our communities. It starts with self and then it
Yeah.
expands out to the
Yep.
community. And that is the most important thing. And I know that might sound abstract. I can talk about it more on social media. Speaking of which, my TikTok handle is Omel, yeah, OHMELLYEAH. And then my Instagram handle is Omelnaw, which is OH underscore
Uh-huh.
MELLAWWW. And I don't really talk that much about these things on Instagram because
Uh-huh.
I've collected that platform a little bit. I mostly talk about this stuff on TikTok,
Yeah.
may get a YouTube. But my future plans, before we hopped on the podcast, I mentioned creating a magazine. So
Uh-huh.
I
Wonderful.
am creating a human interest. Yes, I'm creating a human interest magazine. Well, really, it's more like a media company, but the magazine will be the forefront, the start.
Uh-huh.
And this human interest magazine has the primary goal of encouraging people to self actualize
Uh-huh.
by giving the tools and the resources they need to actively engage in life. I feel like a lot of people are not actively engaged.
Uh-huh.
They sit at home, they spend all of their time working or parenting duty, and there's
Yeah.
no fun. And so I want to encourage people to cook rich meals. I want to encourage people to learn more about their neighbors, learn more about other people's
Yeah, it's
stories.
awesome.
I'm fostering community with
Mm-hmm.
this magazine because
Okay.
that's my way, as talked about.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
In what you said too, I'm thinking, maybe it's a blessing that we have amoral billionaires. There's the most powerful voices today
I think so.
because they have no they have no moral authority whatsoever, and so that
Yeah.
leaves a void for us to fill, with
I
voices. Yeah.
without wishing direct bodily harm, I want people, particularly white Americans, particularly evangelical Americans, particularly men, particularly rich people, I want them to get as uncomfortable as
Yeah.
possible. And I want
Uh-huh.
spirits in their eyes like this and glue them open.
Yeah.
Never repeat the mistakes that we just were making. Like, I'm so serious. Like, we have to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We have to reckon with this nation's past so we can have a better
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, yeah. One of my favorite Buddhist authors is Pema Chodron. She goes, comfortable with uncertainty. And if we have that ethos, then we can face the truth.
Mhm.
And maybe that's where we're headed. So once again, with you speaking, I just feel filled with optimism, perspective. I really appreciate that about what you say, and really wish you every success with your ventures because we need your voice.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
Really fun.
Well, with that, I always say there are lots of things about the Bible that people say about the Bible that aren't really there. And God bless you, and God bless you, the audience. Thank you so much for engaging and listening in.
Thanks,